Stop ignoring your problems. Face up to the things going on around you. This is the Lifecraft Co channel. My name's Julian. Here we go. You don't want to talk about the issues going on right now, and no one ever really does, but now more than ever we need to face up to our fears. We need to face up to what's going on around us. We need to stare the monster down, see what is hiding in the shadows, and I believe we've got to face it. And so this is how to stop ignoring your fears, how to stop ignoring the problems that are going on around you. You know that they go on, they don't solve themselves, and that things don't get better just by pretending everything's okay. It's the hardest thing in the world to do, but this is what we're going to talk about. There's this ancient story written thousands of years ago about these three guys called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three guys lived in a land ruled by a king. Now this king had his way in the whole of the land, and one day decided that he was going to create a statue. And this statue was to be worshipped. People were to stop what they're doing, bow down and worship this statue every time the bell rung, every time he sounded out the noise for them to do this, right across the land. And it was law, which means if you didn't do it, there were going to be big issues. Now, these three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, had their own God. It was the God of Israel. And they did not want to do this, didn't want to compromise their religion, didn't want to compromise their faith, and so refused to bow down and worship this statue that the king had made. Anyway, news gets back to the king through the guards. These guys get arrested, and the king is determined to make them obey, to make them comply. And so he builds a fire, and not just any fire, but he builds a furnace. And you can imagine this kind of brick cave, this sort of wood stove that you would put a pizza in, but human size. And he's going to make them walk into this fire if they do not listen to him. And so these guys, willing to uncompromise, refuse to do it even though they face death. Anyway, the king stokes the fire so hot that the guards around him burn to death because it's that intense. And he gives them one last chance. He said, if you don't bow down and worship this statue, I'm going to throw you in the fire. And this is what the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say to the king. They say, your threat means nothing to us. If you throw us into the fire, the God that we serve can rescue us from the roaring furnace and anything else you might cook up. But even if he doesn't, it wouldn't make a bit of difference, O king. We still wouldn't serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up. And so the king throws them into the fire. Now, in the story, a miracle takes place and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get rescued from the fire. Here's the point that I want to bring out from this ancient story, is that they were willing to face the fire despite the circumstance. That despite the fact that they would come into harm's way, that they were probably going to die and lose their lives, they weren't going to pretend it wasn't an issue, they weren't going to compromise on who they were. They were going to face the fire for all it was worth. For you and I, it feels like we're facing a furnace. When we think about our problems and we're ignoring our problems, they are like a raging fire. They're too hot to handle, but we're not going to be better off by pretending that there isn't a fire. We're not going to be better off by pretending nothing's going wrong and everything is okay. Sometimes life's terrible. Sometimes it's rubbish. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's a slog. But we don't pretend that we haven't got these problems. We need to find ways to walk through these problems, to face the fire, to embrace it, to step into it. The way I look at it is staring the monster down, no longer fighting in the shadows, but facing up to what's going on around us. It can be the hardest thing in the world, but you are not better off by pretending there is nothing going on. And there's nothing wrong with optimism, there's nothing wrong with being positive, but you've also got to be realistic and face what's going on around you with a sense of resilience, grit, and determination. It might be you can do nothing about your problems, but at the very least acknowledging that it's an issue and sitting with it and recognizing it can be powerful in itself to take the fear, to take the sting out of it. You prepare yourself for the worst and you hope for the best. So here's my challenge. What are you ignoring? What problem do you need to stop ignoring right now? What is going on around you? Whether that's in the wider world, something outside of your control, something in your home life or with a friend or a family, a problem that you have swept to the side that actually you just need to acknowledge this is an issue. I'm not saying I know what to do with this. I'm not saying I know how to get around this, but I want to acknowledge that this is a problem. I'm not going to ignore it anymore. And it might just be you can start a conversation. You might be able to do something about it, or you might just be able to sit and say, I acknowledge this is an issue, and that's enough to take the sting out of the problem. Not make the problem go away, but we're facing the fire. We're going to walk through the fire rather than pretend it's not burning away. More like this, like, share, subscribe. Ciao.